Costa de Oliveira, the only person arrested so far in the case, and who witnesses say pursued the men upriver. And moving on to the U.S. gun control, a cross-party group of U.S. senators have agreed a framework for potential legislation on gun safety following a spate of mass shootings. This would include support for tougher checks for buyers aged under 21 and cracking down on illegal gun purchases. Crucially, the proposals are supported by 10 Republicans, meaning they have the numbers to be voted into law. President Biden said the plans were steps in the right direction, but they fall far short of what he called for. Previous attempts to tighten gun laws failed to get the required support in Congress. Tens of thousands of protesters rallied across the U.S. on Saturday to call for stricter gun laws in the wake of 2 mass shootings. Today, we are announcing a common sense but bipartisan proposal to protect America's children, keep our schools safe, and reduce the threat of violence across our country, the Senate group said in a statement. Families are scared, and it is our duty to come together and get something done that will help restore their sense of safety and security in their communities. Crossing over to our neighbors in Rwanda, campaigners against the government's policy to send migrants to Rwanda say they will now take their fight to the Court of Appeal on Monday. It comes after the High Court said the first flight to take asylum seekers from the UK to Rwanda could go ahead. About 31 people have been told they could be on that flight on Tuesday, with more planes to go later this year. The Prince of Wales has been caught up in the row after 2 papers reported he had called the policy appalling. The Daily Mail and the Times both reported that sources had said Prince Charles had made private comments in which he expresses his disappointment over the plan. The Prince is traveling to the East African country later this month to represent the Queen at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting being held in the capital, Kigali. Clarence House, which represents the Prince, reiterated that he remains politically neutral and said that it would not comment on supposed anonymous private conversations. Under the government policy, some of those entering the UK illegally will be flown to Rwanda to apply for asylum there.
Climate news. Nations must keep up hope and focus on tackling global warming despite the many obstacles now to international cooperation, including the war in Ukraine, the coronavirus pandemic, food shortages, and rising energy costs, the UN climate chief urged on Monday. Now, Patricia Espinosa, who is second term as head of the UN Climate Office, and that is ending this year, spoke at the start of the 10-day meeting in Bonn, Germany, where diplomats from around the world will try to lay foundations for this year's International Climate Summit in Egypt. I appeal to you all, especially in these difficult and challenging times, not to lose hope, not to lose focus, but to use our united efforts against climate change as the ultimate act of unity between nations, she said. Now, since the signing of the 2015 Paris Climate Accord, most countries have stepped up their efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that underlie human-made global warming. But collectively, those pledges still fall far short of what is needed to limit global warming since pre-industrial times to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. While Espinosa said that much more is needed, she noted that commitments so far were also made during a time of international turmoil. Now, from the U.S. decision under President Trump to pull out of the Paris Accord, later reversed by the Biden administration, to the first years of the coronavirus pandemic.
Well, away from the climate news in our poll question this morning, where we do want to have a conversation with you, we're looking at the new law that actually gives landlords quite a period of about 30 days for them to evict tenants. Now, this is in the new tenants bill that was assented to by His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni last week. That was on 9th June 2022. So we want to hear from you. What is your take on the new law that gives landlords power to evict tenants within 30 days. What is your take on the new law that gives landlords power to evict tenants within 30 days? Of course, the hashtag is UBCGMU, and you can also send us a text message, a WhatsApp message on 0709 602 592. While you are at it, I know that Robert also has some good news, a gospel he wants to spread this Monday morning.
It's a fresh week, and of course you must be very mindful of your health. And how do you do that? By ensuring you boost your immune system, because that is the only way your body will be able to fight off a number of diseases. They could attack you, but they won't be knocked off, and you won't end up having to visit a physician, spend a lot on those medical bills. So hallelujah. Jinga tea drink. This is a very sweet drink. For those that enjoy sweet things, there is jinga, and of course there's so much for you. Then hallelujah, tamarind drink. This one, if you enjoy the opaque bottle, I guarantee you it is a master in fighting hangover. At least people have told me that. And of course the other thing is it will also greatly boost your immune system. And even the skin, you don't have to bleach, apply so much. Just take this, because they will detoxify you. So that is one of the things they do. So ensure, instead of spending a lot of your money on makeup, spending a lot of time working on your face, well, just have these. And you
speak from experience, because your skin actually looks nice, and I would want to attribute that to you. Hallelujah. You do take a lot of those, so maybe he's actually speaking from experience.
Yeah,
so I can his skin is okay.
He said that he was told it heals hangover. I don't know whether he was told.
No,
or
this must be something, Robert, you have experience.
Anyway, Robert, you will keep the stories and you will have to tell them to us.
Who told you and what
they
me,
told you.
or we can even, Mollen did sciences, so I can use real specimen. So after I give you this and I find out.
Today being a bad day, and of course a new fresh week would need some inspiration to take us all the way as we transition from Monday, Tuesday, all the way till Friday. Now we're giving you this inspirational song. We're hoping that maybe it could put your energies up, it could put your moods up, just in case they are low. And if they're already up there, well, we hope that it can maintain them all the way as we finish up. We'll be back for Good Morning Uganda Newsreel in the next hour, and of course more and more amazing segments are still lined up for you all the way till 9 a.m. We will be back right after this.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala.
share your story, visit airtel.co.ug/UG needs more of you, or call or SMS 162.
Airtel, the smartphone network. Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda. Once again, thank you for joining us for this very special segment that is the newsreel, where we're talking about stories that are reeling in the news industry over here. And my name is Philomena Mastiko. Once again, I am joined by Robert Kirabo, Nyonyintono. It's a Monday, and again, it is the 13th of June 2022. This Monday morning, we want to look at our tenants, our landlords here in Kampala, here in Uganda overall. Now, for over very many years, we've had quite endless arguments, endless discussions, endless scuffles between landlords and tenants, Robert. And some have ended quite in a good spirit. Others have really ended with threats, with, fights, with quarrels. It hasn't really been, I must say, in an orderly manner. But last week, we saw His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni assent to 8 bills. Now, one of these bills was the landlord and tenant bill. Now, with this bill comes quite a lot of things, or instructions, or what should be done, the do's and don'ts. Now, this, of course, covers both the landlords and the tenants. Depending on where you fall between these two categories, you're supposed to know what you're supposed to do, in how long. All this is stipulated under this bill. Now, before we get into all that and the discussion, just to remind you on what is running on our poll question, which, of course, is in relation to the same topic this morning. We just want to know from you, what is your take on the new law that gives landlords a power to evict tenants within 30 days? What is your take on the new law that gives landlords a power to evict tenants in a span of 30 days? Now, Robert, if we're going to go through some of the things that were stipulated in this bill, one of them, just like I read in the poll question, as a landlord, you are not supposed to be evicting your tenant in a space less than 30 days. So you have 30 days, that is a month, for you to evict, your tenant. You cannot just wake up one day and pull them out or push them out of your houses. According to this new law, it's very illegal, and there are very many serious consequences to all these. But before we even break it down, this law, according to you, Robert, who do you think it favors? The tenant, the landlord?
First, laws are meant to address a problem.
Sure thing.
And I want to say that by and large, if you ask traders in Uganda, under their umbrella organization, that is Kampala Capital City Traders Association, now Kasita Uganda, because it moved from only Kampala, now it's across the country. One of the things they will tell you is the problem, the challenge they have been having with the landlords.
Yes.
And many of them had hope that when a law like this comes into place, it is going to regulate and improve on the relationship between the landlords and their tenants. Now, when you look at this law, I don't think it addressed the problem. It's so much on the side of landlords, and I'll give you details to why I'm saying this.
Yes.
But even before we go any further, we must understand that what is Uganda's housing deficit? How many people, if you're to think about the population of about 43 million Ugandans, how many of those are not renting houses? Most so in urban centers. I want to tell you, you have less than 30% of your total population having houses that they're not renting. When it comes to the business community, when you look at statistics from Kasita, they will tell you that almost 90% of businesses in Uganda, in these urban centers, people are renting premises. It's very hard for you to find an arcade, and that arcade is owned by a trader, so the shop there, this person is not paying rent. When you go downtown, 98% of these people are in renting premises. So if you're to have a law, that would mean that you would look at the biggest population, and this law should be looking at how does it ease life for the biggest population. Now, what comes out of this law, I will just read a few outstanding, and I want to say outstanding sections of this law.
Yes.
One is failure to pay rent in 30 days. Now, 30 days is about 4 weeks.
Yes.
The economy right now, though our law is not made for this particular time, 30 days with the recovery is very short a time. Many people downtown having challenges of business because business is not doing very well. 30 days for a landlord to have the right to evict this person is very little a time. And I was looking at the chairman of Kampala arcade whatever dealers. He was saying, but 30 days if I've been having business in your shop.
Yes.
Are 30 days enough for me to look for another shop? Because for a business, if you're living Mutasa Cafe, that's where your business has been. You're not going for a building in Kajansi.
You still have to look for a building
You have to
that
look
is within the
within,
strategic
and
area.
it takes people a lot of time to find these spaces. So in case someone has failed, that is for the business people. They say 30 days is very less a time. Let's go to someone who is staying in this home.
Yes.
Not for business purposes. If a person has failed in 30 days and you're going to evict them, not looking at, then where are they going?
Yes.
And the law goes ahead to give the landlord a right to get your property, you know? I don't want to use the word confiscate, but hold your property so they can sell that property to recover their rent areas.
Yes.
As long as it is present, there is a local authority, that is a person from LC, and the police. Now this person has failed to pay rent. His property is confiscated. It's going to be sold for this one to recover.
Yes.
The cost. I don't know if that is favoring majority of Ugandans. Third, the law goes ahead to give the landlord a right to increase rate as long as he has given you a notification in 60 days.
Yes.
That I find favorable because these guys have been increasing rent as and to when they feel like.
But also, much as they were given 60 days, that is of course what, like about 3 months? Actually 2 months, yes. But they did say overall, over the year, it shouldn't go beyond 10%. Yes, if you're going to increase rent for the whole year, it shouldn't go beyond 12%. So don't you think still that is quite, it's fair?
It's fair. That is the only segment, that is the only part of the law where, in my opinion, I feel it favors the tenant.
The tenant.
Because, yes, these landlords have been giving, you know, a man wakes up, he sees a good car, says Mbongeza.
Yes.
And he knows he's going to deposit, but in about 6 months he'll be able to
clear
pay,
the entire bill.
because,
yes.
So then there is a very complicated bit of this law, of this act. That is when the law says that there must be a contract or an agreement between the landlord and the tenant as you're going to enter this premises or use this house.
Yes.
Now, this is the complicity, and where I feel government has made a loss. Previously, these owners to avert tax of these buildings, the landlords,
yes,
have not been giving receipts, or they underdeclare the amount paid. Now, we must understand there's a vulnerable person here. There's a vulnerable person here. The tenant coming in this premise and the owner of this building, one is vulnerable. Much as one is giving money to the other,
yes,
for their business. But one is vulnerable. The tenant remains vulnerable. This guy owns the premises. When you leave, another person will come. So this agreement that is between the two of you, previously, government was losing because they were underdeclaring revenue.
yes.
I've ever rented in Kampala, had a small business. And I want to tell you the dynamics. We used to pay money to a landlord who just get a business card and write at the back your name and date and sign.
To show that you have paid your rent for this specific period of time.
And that is what you would show the manager of that building. Money is not indicated.
Behind the business card, they don't even put the amount of money?
No, they don't. Now if you wake up and you're like, he says, you leave my buildings. So this agreement, who is drafting this agreement? You've gotten a money filo. They tell you this business or old clothes is working out. You need a place where you're going to sell from. At the end of the day, these landlords are going to draft their agreements, and the tenants just have to fill in. Then what is annoying most is that for a long time, our traders have appealed to government that let's not pay in dollars.
Which actually is one of the provisions where they said the standard currency that should be transacted between the tenant and the landlord should be in Ugandan currency. And I must say, Robert, during COVID time, we saw very many in fact, I did not know that very many buildings here in Kampala they charge rent in dollars. Right, and I mean over time we have seen the Ugandan shilling depreciating.
When the dollar is high, he says pay in dollars. When it depreciates, pay in Uganda shillings. So this law has not addressed that problem. Why am I saying no?
Yes.
Because there's a provision that where there is an agreement between the landlord and the tenant, then if the two agree, then you can pay in dollars.
But is there an opportunity, or is there a chance that they could both agree?
I don't know, sometimes our members of parliament, and no wonder the president had rejected to send to this store in the beginning. This was the second time it goes back. If you do not understand certain issues, then invite. You say represent us, but sometimes I have a feeling, if you know how business works, most of you could be landlords. Then don't discuss issues with the business community without their real involvement.
Yes.
The issue of the dollar has been the biggest problem. For business, when you leave that clause that where there has been an agreement, I want to repeat this, a tenant is very vulnerable, most so in the business community. Because we are looking at, I've always said this, move around Kampala, these arcades are owned by people, it's just a handful. And they owed these traders at ransom. Philo, it's like you, me, and Mollen.
Yes.
We are colleagues. When we all agree, we've agreed. That's why when so-and-so says, this is my agreement, you move building to building, and it's almost the same agreement.
Yes.
So that when one holds you at ransom, you have no alternative. When one says, for me, my agreement, if you want to get that shop, this is the thing. Read through, sign. Or not go to some other place. So when you go to another arcade, when you leave Mutasa and say I'm going to Hamu, another arcade, you're going to find a document very similar.
Yes.
I was telling you of that receipt thing where they give you a business card. You leave Cooper, you go to this, it is the same.
So are you trying to say, Robert, that because in this law, the provision says that they can only pay in dollars if they have come to an agreement to pay the same amount, Ugandan shillings equivalent to the US dollar. So are you trying to say that there are certain landlords who are going to take advantage of that, that specific provision and just make it a standard form of payment that, listen, this is not an agreement. I take my rent in US dollars, and that is how you're going to work with me. If you can't pay your rent in a dollar format, then we cannot do business.
Definitely.
There is no agreement. It's going to be a standardized
what they are going to do is they are going to draft an agreement, and I want to repeat this without fear of contradiction, that these landlords are one person. They have over a time asked the business community, played syndicate to oppress their tenants. We can mention names. Professionally, I won't.
Yes.
But we can mention names. Go to Kampala, go downtown. You're going to find one person owning, or allegedly, I don't know, because some have come out and to say, these are not all my arcades. There was a trying time in COVID. One said, I also have a few of them. These are not all my arcades. But at the end of the day, you'll find that what Robert is going to do in his 4 or 5 arcades, Philomena Mastiko is going to do the same. Mollen Kenyena is going to do the same. Because at the evening, they sit in one place. They will be in the Kwagarana group and they will say, Teka liafurumye. Now, where is it oppressing us? How do you exploit this? When you go to one building and they tell you, for us, this is the tenant's agreement. You pen your signature.
Yes.
Who is going to debate with you? The man got alone to come up with a structure. And you're coming saying, I look at this and I'm not agreeing to this clause and this clause.
Yes.
Go! There's someone who has just sold cows. He wants to start a business in Kampala. There's someone who has sold graveyards of their grandparent. He's coming and he wants to start a business in Kampala. These people are not looking for people to rent their buildings.
Yes.
They have them. So when you leave the tenants at the mercy of these people, over a time, you remember the COVID times, when they were pleading, at least excuse us 2 months,
yes,
at least excuse us 1 month. It was more like policy. Remember, I think it was only Ham who was lenient, and a few. The rest. So where a law talks about 30 days, I think for a business, you can spend even 3 months of not getting good business.
Yes.
So where are you going to go? You know? I think the only area where I see leniency was the 60 days notice, that now they can't just wake up.
Yes.
They're not exceeding 10%. That is a very good gesture to the tenants.
Well, before we get into the repercussions of any tenant who is found to be breaking any of these laws or restrictions or these provisions, just to remind you of our poll question, what exactly is your take on the new law that gives landlords power to evict tenants within 30 days? What do you think about this new law where landlords they're given the power to evict their tenants within 30 days just in case they fail to catch up on their rent dues? Hashtag UBCGMU, and the number on the screen should be the one that you use to send us a message, and then we can be able to read into them and also share them with our Good Morning Uganda family. But getting back to this, Robert, still there is a provision in this law that actually says that any landlord who is caught evicting a tenant, without giving them that notice of 30 days, they are inclined to giving them, actually to paying them back 3 times their rent dues. All right. So if I am paying, say, 600,000 Uganda shillings every month, and you evict me before a 30 days notice, I mean, you're going to have to give me what? That's about 1.8 to compensate. Do you think this is a fair punishment?
I would say, first and foremost, with this law, which landlord would attempt? Because it favors them.
Yes.
Which landlord would attempt that? Well knowing. Second, even if that is done, apart from these commercial buildings, how many people, on average Ugandans in houses of 500,
600,
600, yes, some even as low as 200 maybe.
Yes.
But how many of those are going to take legal action against the landlord? How many? For them to secure that 3 months in advance. You see, for every law, you must understand who is vulnerable. I think laws should be there to protect the vulnerable.
Yes.
This issue of drafting equality, is saying you're improving a relationship. I find this may not address the problem. With this sweet law that favors the landlords, it's going to be very rare for any landlord to violate the clauses. Because already it is a done deal better for them. I think they're only oppressed at that level where, and even there, no, because now the law gives the landlord right to access their premises.
Yes.
And there's also another clause that I find still where tenants are not appreciating it very well. That before you leave my premise, you must leave it the way you found it.
Which was actually bringing me to the next thing. I'm sure you have been through that process of house hunting. I mean, very many Ugandans, and they have made quite a whole lot of noise about it, where when you get a house and you want to move in, you'll find your landlord asking for an advance of about 4 months, and then they'll probably give you 1 month. They'll tell you 1 month is for security. Any damage that you cause to this house will, it will be sorted out with that security fee. But again, the argument by most Ugandans is that even when you have moved into that house and maybe you're 2 months in or 3 months in, and you paid 4 months for security, They feel like some landlords really want to do it the most unethical way. They will find a way of cutting that money, even when you've not done any harm, you know, to the house. You haven't broken a window, you haven't broken, I don't know, you haven't caused any damage. But they feel like this this extra security fee shouldn't be given back to you. I have seen people quite in serious arguments with their landlords when they want to move out because they don't want to return the security fee. I mean, how does that even work out?
First, you must understand that there are people that get into this house and leave it in a mess.
Yes, those are definitely there. The damages they cause are way more than the security fees that they probably given.
There's a tenant who will leave a house and you feel pity for the landlord. Because even the 3 months someone pays in advance may be spent in renovating this house so that somebody else can be able to appreciate it and take it on.
Yes.
But that said, there's also been a lot of exploitation by landlords.
Yes.
One, you can't be in a house for 1 or 2 years and still maintain it the way you found it. Somehow.
Yes.
Even these apartments, you go to these high-end places, so you'll find someone, most of our brothers, the foreigners, from some bit, yeah, those ones can damage a house and you also accept.
Yes.
But the problem has been where this person has tried all it takes. For example, a person can come in the area, notice there is insecurity. After 3 months, he says, no, I must leave this place. When there isn't any meaningful damage, person look at the walls, look at, and then say, I can't refund.
Because there is a crack in a wall, there is a crack in the ceiling. They look
for all excuses.
Yes.
I think this law, the clauses were not very conclusive in some areas. That's where I mentioned issues like the agreement. Who drafts the agreement?
Yes.
What powers does the tenant have in this agreement? Now issues like leaving the house or premises the way you found them. Who is there to say no? You're talking about a broken window.
Yes.
Because you can come in the house, you and me, and the window was broken, even you repair it.
Yes.
If the landlord chooses to say that window was not broken.
It's basically his word against your word.
So, and who is there? Remember, he has the money. It is him to refund the money. And with the law, you produce evidence.
Yes.
If you're going to carry on a civil suit, you know how long it takes in this country and how expensive it's going to be for you.
Yes.
So if you are expecting 300, get an advocate, go to court. Now, you want a balance of 300.
Yes.
So, you know, with the law, it must be very clear, because even just the wordings, the language used in law can change a meaning. So if you're going to come up with a law, be very, very clear that it almost puts everything in black and white.
Yes. It shouldn't leave a gray zone.
When I'm going in these premises, do I take a video, store it, so that when I'm leaving, is there a body put in place? Or do you invite the LC? Do they have the powers that they can look at this house before you enter? So when you have these issues, this is the point of redress. Is there a tribunal set up by government for maybe landlords and tenants tribunal?
Yes.
Is there a commission where these can be addressed? Otherwise, by and large, this leaves the tenant exploited, and this leaves the landlord. Most of the situation that has been, landlords have not been crying. In town here, landlords have not been having these issues.
It's not really it's not one of the main problems.
Maybe in these outskirts, more so residential houses where people stay, that's where they've been having issues, where someone wakes up and the tenant is nowhere to be seen. Yes, the man moved overnight.
Yes.
He's nowhere to be seen. There is one I looked for until I gave up, because I was spending more money hunting for the person. People calling me, you pass a radio announcement, and someone calls you and tells you, I know that person.
Yes.
First give me this amount of money. You know, even Buffett, at the end of that, I was losing more. So that has been the only problem of landlords. But you cannot leave an arcade like that.
Yes.
You cannot leave a business premise like that. So for accommodation, even a smart landlord, you go to the LC, all these, those are things you could avoid. I still feel it has not benefited the client to a larger extent, yet they are the majority and the landlords are just a handful.
While understanding the implications of the new law, and that is the Landlord and Tenant Law 2022. Of course, there are certain gaps that still need to be fulfilled, but there are those provisions that were really put out there in black and white. You cannot evict somebody, a tenant, in less than 30 days, meaning you have to give them notice. You cannot increase your rent in less than 60 days. You have to give them 2 months notice to let them know that anytime the rent will be increased. And of course, the rent increment overall, during the course of the year shouldn't go beyond 10%. I mean, there are very many provisions. Now, you as a tenant, you as a landlord, are you well versed with this law? Or if you're not, maybe it's high time you did. How do you benefit from this? How does it help you? How does it serve you? This is why you need to go get yourself acquainted with this very specific law to know your rights as a tenant, but also your rights as a landlord. Well, that's it for this Good Morning Uganda newsreel. We'll be getting into the traffic updates and, of course, the press review in our papers. That is the Daily Monitor, the New Vision, and of course the Daily Nation. Later on, I'll be back for the GMU agenda. Good morning, Uganda.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
Get connected today with the My Airtel 4G smartphone and enjoy free data for 1 whole year worth 86,500 Uganda shillings. That's free 2 GB for the first month and free 1 GB for the next 11 months at only 250,000 Uganda shillings with free data for 1 whole year worth 86,500 shillings, making the effective price of the 4G phone 163,500 shillings only. Airtel, the smartphone network.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Welcome to the press review, and in the papers this morning we start off with the Daily Monitor. Now we look at the big headline there: road contractors to get paid after work. And of course the Minister of Finance, Mr. Matia Kasaija, has written to President Museveni and he's proposing that government pays contractors upon completion of the given work. Now that story is on page 4 of the Daily Monitor this Monday. But still in more news, we look at government names new COVID hotspots. Now these are some of the details that you cannot afford to catch up on, seeing as that we're seeing the numbers go high up once again. Now, still in more news this morning, we look at Masaka to move graves for city roadworks, and Museveni blames past regimes for poverty. Now, in the big picture there, we'll look at the Congo mess, and that is, of course, fresh clashes in the Democratic Republic of Congo push more refugees into Uganda. And the picture can clearly show you how the refugees are crossing over into Uganda. Well, make sure you get yourself the Daily Monitor this morning for all these stories. Now, in the panorama corner, from Kampala to upcountry, how impunity on roads has actually spread. This is something you would really love to read this morning. Moving on to the second page of the Daily Monitor, we take a look at the archives. Quite some interesting pictures over there. Who were they? What were they doing? When was this? Reason for you to get the Daily Monitor. And today in history, Israel Premier visits Uganda, and that was back in 1966. And also still in history today, Moscow calls for action against Israel. This was back in the day in 1967. But also seeing what is happening in the New Vision, what do we have, Mollen?
Well, private schools probed over NSSF. Now, 128,000 teachers not making statutory retirement savings. That is within the NSSF, section. Well, much more of those details on page 5 of the New Vision. But also they give you a big picture right there. Veterans cry out to Saleh and Museveni. And they're working right there asking for, what they deserve at that point. The New Vision also gives you jail time for giving alms to street children. Details on page 12 of the New Vision. And in lifestyle, musicians bow to Maurice Kibia. Well, that is detailed on page 60 of the New Vision. Abandoned, a 10-year-old boy stranded with 3 siblings. And also in the land saga, Commissioner defies Minister on cancellation of land title. Details are on page 11 of the New Vision for this morning. Now, the New Vision also on the second page gives you right there Uganda-UK conversion to showcase opportunities for the diaspora. And that is obviously given into more details on that page, as well as they give you a picture of the chairperson forced out of Council Hall. Well, that was in Mpigi, but more of what happened right there, you can tell from the pictures that was a huge fight. And today in history, the New Vision gives you a 2000, that is June 13th, hearing of petition against the referendum law starts. And also today in history, in 2008, June 13th, Ireland rejects Lisbon Treaty. That is all right there in the New Vision for you.
The Daily Monitor sports perfect revenge, and the best season January signing Karim Ndugwa's breast, and Simon Peter Okate's strike help will avenge last season's humiliation, of course, by the Venoms in the Uganda Cup final. And then taking you through the making of crested cranes. Orogot happy with progress in NCAA finals. So yes, I must say it's quite a full package in the Sports Daily Monitor this very morning. So grab yourself a copy and catch up on all these action.
And in the New Vision Sport for this morning, they show you Ndeje second in Africa. Well, of course, they're giving you the 10th All Africa University Games 2022, where Ndeje is emerging as the second in that line. And of course, silver winner Rachel Chebet, that is, Rachel Chebet has claimed Uganda's pride after she won the country's silver medal at the Africa Senior Athletic Championship that was concluded on Sunday. Right there, such a big win. But also more in the New Vision Sport, they're giving you results. That is as the country is preparing for AFCON. A lot is in there. And of course, you can check it out. We will make Uganda happy. And that is the Crested Cranes as they were being crowned by the Speaker of Ugandan Parliament, Anita Among, standing right there with them. That is after the Women Championship. Uganda really did make us proud right there. Grab yourself a copy of the New Vision and catch up with all those details.
Well, taking you through our poll question this morning before we get onto the roads, of course, we did ask you, what is your take on the new law that gives landlords power to evict tenants within 30 days? What is your take on the new law that gives landlords power to evict tenants within 30 days? Coming in from you, Derek in Makindye, you are saying, well, good morning, family. Though 30 days might not be enough, but I'm happy if that law can be implemented, because landlords have been evicting tenants all along, minus giving them time. Some even go further to confiscate their property, but at least for a month, someone can look for a better option. Thank you so much, Derek from Makindye, and for always supporting Good Morning Uganda family and waking up with us as early as 6 from Monday to Friday. Well, taking you through the Daily Nation and of course some of the top stories there. Now we know that Kenya is definitely on a serious countdown where we are supposed to be having they're supposed to be having their new president. So anytime now, the decision 2022 is taking its a beat. But yes, in the stories in the Daily Nation this morning, Embu's Robin Hood, murdered businessman, led a double life. And relief as the KNEC pays exam officials 684 million Kenyan shillings. Now the agency clears allowances of over 80,000 staff. Now you can catch up also on Uhuru allies to bitter force. Of course, this is in relation to decision 2022, and Kenyatta's endorsement of Odinga over Ruto has cost him several key allies, raising the question of whether they are disloyal or simply fulfilling his unwritten promise. Very, very interesting. Chebukati responds to Raila's queries on August election. Well, all these interesting stories, definitely you can catch them in the Daily Nation this morning. But also getting onto our roads this morning, being a Monday, I must say that it's actually very, very, very heavy, especially in areas of Bukoto, in Tinda, Naguru, as you're headed to town. Now, seeing that this is quite some busy area that very many people use to get to town, I must say that you have quite a very serious traffic to get through this morning. Now, if I am supposed to take you all the way from Chebando, that is Chebando Chisalo Road over here, the traffic is very intense. Now, if this is your route every single morning, you must notice that this is quite different from the usual. The traffic is usually building up or it goes down, but today it is maroon, showing you that it is very intense. So quite some time that is going to be spent over there if you don't plan accordingly, or you get a different route that you can use to connect to the city center. Well, moving on to still on that Chebando Chisalo Road, as you're connecting to Bukoto Chisasi Road, which is not any different because the traffic is building up on several spots of this exact road. So again, that might be a cue for you to start looking for another plan. That is, if you haven't gotten into this traffic situation already as it is. Now, seeing as it is a Monday, definitely you will expect some traffic in areas like this. Now, as you're moving on to Chira Road, this traffic is quite also building up on several spots. Actually, in other places, it's already heavy. So for you who is meant to be navigating through it in a very period of time, you may have to exercise quite some fair amounts of patience, because clearly it's not really an easy one to go through this morning. And that is, of course, for those who are headed to Ntinda and also headed to Mulago and also trying to join the John Babiha Road. So yes, you need to expect the traffic over there. And I must say that in most spots around here, it's not any different. When I take you all the way to Lugogo Bypass also has quite some areas that are very heavy with traffic. Over here, it is quite evident that the lines are actually maroon, they're not red. Like I already said, maroon shows you quite some heavy traffic in that given space. So you need to also start planning ahead. However, for the rest of Lugogo Bypass, I must say that it is manageable for now, but things could actually change. Now, also if you're joining to Naguru, where you're looking at Naguru Avenue, Naguru Road, the situation is also quite very heavy. It is either intense in some spots or building up. So I must say that all these areas, because most of them are actually shortcuts as you're headed to town. So if the shortcuts are heavy with traffic, there are high chances that even the main road is actually very heavy with traffic. So you need to actually be very thoughtful, be very patient, and I mean, we all want to use the main road. So you have to make sure that people are safe while using it. Do not be very impatient. And of course, as you're joining to the Kampala-Jinja highway over here from Lugogo bypass, as the traffic is building up, and while you're joining here, the traffic becomes very heavy. Kampala-Jinja highway, on the other hand, is also very heavy with the traffic if you're coming in from Nakawa, which is very evident by these red lines here. This is a very busy spot, and of course, we expect very many road users. We have motorists, we have pedestrians, we have private cars, public transport means. So yes, you need to plan accordingly as you're headed to the city center. I must say that this Monday morning is not looking good, especially when it comes to the traffic. So I mean, it's not a surprise because we know that everybody is trying to get to town to make sure that they do what they have to do. Well, also just to remind you that we do have a poll question that is running on our social media platforms, where we want to have your take, especially on this new law that gives landlords power to evict tenants within 30 days. The hashtag is UBCGMU, and the WhatsApp number is 0709602592. We'll be sharing the feedback as we go on Good Morning Uganda. But for now, we get into climate and weather forecast. Mollen, how is it looking today morning?
Well, today morning seems to be mostly a mix of clouds and sun across most areas within the country, except for the few areas that are close to Lake Victoria that will be dealing with those rains. Even in some areas, we've already started having those, but obviously we'll be catching up on that later. First, let's take a look at what is making headlines, especially in terms of weather and climate extremes. Well, we have seen, drought crisis across the U.S., and so far we're seeing an extended drought that has left vegetation dry, and that is of course across Southern California. Now this has taken on a couple of days, right from the fact that temperatures have been increasing over the area. We're talking about Los Angeles, we're talking about most of the areas within South California, and so far what the local authorities are saying is that more than 90% of these wildfires are actually caused by humans. And obviously the officials also say that they have access to the water that is needed to battle the fires. However, it looks like this is getting out of hand as more and more fires are breaking up on a daily. And also to add on that is that now most areas within New Mexico, which is also part of the US, is looking at the second largest wildfire ever seen over that area. Now this is covering most of the areas within that place, and of course what is being shown is the fact that there is a black fire. And of course, two of the largest wildfires in Mexico's history are happening in this year. And of course, that is breaking a record from what happened in 2012, which was actually Whitewater Baldy, which was, covering about 297 acres of land. But this one that is being talked about did cover 318,000 acres. That was the Gulf of Kenyena. And now this also happened in 2022. But also the black fire right now that is being battled across the area is now taking into record as the second largest over the area. And of course, the areas that are being talked about are still highlighted to get much more of extremes. We're talking about, the deadly temperatures that are expected. Now, so far, according to the local news agencies, they're showing that over 35 million people are under heat advisory or excessive heat warning from California to Texas, as high temperatures peak in the west and spread eastwards over the weekend. Now, all those areas that are highlighted in red to orange right there are the ones under advisory, of course, for the extreme heat warnings over the area. Now, you'll talk about issues like evacuation at that point, but take a look at the areas that are left without the warnings. That is just a small portion of the area. Now, we're talking about areas from Sacramento to Houston. Records are breaking, and of course, more than 75 cities across the U.S. could be breaking daily records, as this is anticipated even from the meteorological centers right there that are making advisories for this area. Now, it looks like most of the events that are happening are really to the extreme and, of course, breaking records. Now, this is also something that is contributing to the discussions that were in Bonn, Germany, as we're talking about preparations for COP27 in Egypt. Because you look at the fact that countries that are supposed to be helping out most of the developed countries that have made pledges to, helping out developing countries in terms of adapting to climate change, themselves are dealing with extreme weather events. But the way they are handling them is much more than we would handle them, because at this point, you look at developing countries having limited funds when it comes to extreme weather events. But it doesn't take away the fact that all of us are experiencing this, and this is obviously becoming a global challenge, something that we should be looking out for and possibly finding solutions. Now, also what is coming in from China is that there has been quite some heavy floods over the area, and obviously this was also coupled with the landslides. And so far what we do know is that there are reported numbers of deaths, and so far what was coming through is that at least 25 people died in several provinces of China. That was after an increasing heavy summer rainfall and landslides. That is also from the local news channels over there. Now, we're looking at areas of China especially that have been dealing with most of these rains for this time of the year, and except the extremes are just getting more frequent. And what we do know so far is that at least 25 people have died, and of course there is still missing people from the landslides that local authorities haven't confirmed yet. And also that is also adding to some of the extreme weather events that are happening across the world. And of course we also know that most of the areas that are in alert right now is especially Southern Asia, where we have seen the monsoon season picking up. Now, when we talk about monsoons over the Indian Ocean or taking in South Asia, we're looking at a period where there's going to be rains that feed into the agriculture, yes, but most of these rains are going to be associated with extreme weather events. And looking at what we have been dealing with recently, the sea surface temperatures are rising. We have most of these temperatures over the oceans rising. What that means is that these will be favorable for development of most of these tropical cyclones and tropical storms that, of course, bring in the extreme weather in terms of, flooding, in terms of, more of the rains that come through to even destruction. So that is the area that is still under alert for likelihood of flooding and, of course, most of the landslides. But, of course, having that it is a renowned season, there is preparation to curb most of that. But, of course, you cannot prepare for extreme weather extensively, because there is going to be a lot that is attributed to that, from death to destruction. That is something that we have already said, and scientists continue to say. You cannot adapt to, even when we're talking about effects of climate change, how we can mitigate, how we can, stop that. We cannot adapt to death. We cannot adapt to, what is being destroyed. So it is better that we actually change our action to make sure that we are not having most of these variations. We want to come back home here and take a look at what is happening across the country. We will be tapping in from our satellites, that is across the units, that showing what is happening over Uganda right now. Now, it looks like we still have a sunny morning, where you see those open grey colors. That is indicative of sunny skies across northern Uganda. That is extending all the way up to the western stretch, of course, eastern Uganda as well. Most areas dealing with quite a mix of clouds and sun. And what we're seeing is just a rainy system that is starting off over the islands of Lake Victoria, and that is where we do have some rains right now as we speak. Looks like that is headed for the central part of Lake Victoria Basin. That is where we have Ginger, as well to the eastern parts of Lake Victoria, but also that is bringing some cloudy weather across parts of Kampala, and a few areas close to Lake Victoria already starting to have those rains. We do expect those to also come into our morning, but looks like that system is headed westwards, and most likely it will be bringing us rains, especially to the western parts of Lake Victoria. We're talking about areas of Masaka right there already having cloudy weather, and also towards areas of Zimbabwe, Lyantonde right there, also likely to have most of those rains come through as we talk about this morning. But for right now, we're looking at a few of those showers already across the islands of Kalangala right there, and as that system develops, we might be looking at quite some rainy systems developing over that area. But also most areas within Mount Elgon Highlands are still developing when it comes to cloudy weather. We could be looking at rainy weather for this morning. But we'll go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast for this morning. And of course, that is coming in from the Uganda National Meteorological Authority. Well, starting off with the western part of Lake Victoria, that is where we have Masaka, Kalisizo, Zimbabwe and Rakai. We are forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine. And of course, temperatures will be quite pleasant at 26 degrees centigrade. Now looking at the southwestern part of the country, we have Mbarara, Ibanda, Bushenyi and Rubirizi. We're forecasting sunny intervals. That is also starting off with a beautiful 26 degrees centigrade. We do expect a few rains to come through, but that will be later in the afternoon across southwestern Uganda. Now looking at Mount Elgon Highlands, we already have those clouds that are starting to develop over that area. That will be bringing in rains later as the morning progresses, starting off with quite a chilly 25 degrees centigrade. Now across the eastern parts of Lake Victoria, that is Tororo, Busia, Iganga and Jinja, we have those clouds over the area. And that will also be bringing in some rains over that place, and temperatures will be starting off quite warm at 27 degrees centigrade. We do expect that to clear as we head towards evening. Now looking at Soroti, Katakwi, Moria, Kumi and of course the eastern part of the country, we're forecasting isolated showers that will be coming through later as we head into the afternoon. Also starting off with a warm 27 degrees centigrade. We do expect those rains to clear as well later as we head into evening. Now across the eastern part of Central, where we have Ruwero, Wobbly, Zibiruri, Nakaseke, we do have Nakasola in that category as well. We're forecasting isolated showers that will be coming in as the morning progresses, starting off with quite a warm 28 degrees centigrade. We could be having some of those rains stick around even for later in the afternoon. Now the central part of northern Uganda looks like we're starting off with quite a sunny morning, and that is expected to dominate much of the morning over the area. That will be starting off with quite a hot 29 degrees centigrade. Of course, we'll be heading for the lower 30s later in the afternoon. That is going to be quite hot over there, and we're still going to be expecting those sunny conditions even as we head into the afternoon. Now across the central part of Lake Victoria, that is where we have Mukono, we have Entebbe, Kampala and Wakiso, we're forecasting isolated showers. We already have that cloudy system that is moving in over from Lake Victoria, and that will be bringing in a few rains, starting off with a pleasant 26 degrees centigrade. But we do expect some of those rains to cross over into the afternoon, especially for those areas that are close to Lake Victoria. And of course, that is the same system that will be bringing us rains in the afternoon, still towards the western part of Lake Victoria. But of course, most of that will be dominating the southern sector of the country that is likely to have rainy conditions in the afternoon. However, northern Uganda and eastern Uganda continues to be dry. We're seeing that numbers are also increasing, so that is the one area, if you're headed there or if you're living around there, you need to take it easy on yourself. It's going to be quite hot, it's going to be dry. That is the time you need to have your water bottle with you in case you're moving anywhere. Well, that is it in terms of weather and nature. We do have Good Morning Uganda agenda coming up, and later we'll also be having sports highlights. Later than that, we'll be going into Good Morning Uganda Extra. My name is Mollen, Kenyena. I want to wish you a lovely morning.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Simply deposit 20K or more on your mobile money for a chance to win 3 Toyota Succeeds and money to 2,000 lucky winners every week. We're giving away 24 cars and over 2 billion shillings of mobile money.
Welcome to English in a Minute. This is a weasel. These wild animals are small and tricky.
Wow, Anna. Looks like you could use some help. Let me carry that.
Thanks, Jonathan. I can always count on you. Jessica, not so much.
She weaseled out of helping you again, didn't she?
Yes, she did. She's a weasel.
To weasel out of something means to successfully avoid doing something. in a dishonest or clever way. This phrasal verb has a mostly negative meaning. You can also call someone a weasel, like Anna did. Some animals just have a bad reputation. And that's English in a minute.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Get connected today with the My Airtel 4G smartphone and enjoy free data for 1 whole year worth 86,500 Uganda shillings. That's free 2 GB for the first month and free 1 GB for the next 11 months at only 250,000 Uganda shillings with free data for 1 whole year worth 86,500 shillings, making the effective price of the 4G phone 163,500 shillings only. Airtel, the smartphone network.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Thank you for joining us once again for Good Morning Uganda Agenda, or what you'd ideally call the GMU Agenda, on this Monday. It is the 13th of June 2022. My name is Philomena Mastiko. Now, in this hour, of course, you know that we get to talk about issues of national importance. Now, I'm not by myself in studio, of course. I am with Mr. Edwin Musime. Well, thank you for joining us this morning again. It's been quite a while. Somebody would say, well, it was just maybe 1 week or two.
Just a couple of days ago.
It's really long for me.
I'm glad to be here. I'm soon feeling like a soon permanent fixture here. So
I mean, it wouldn't
I hope
hurt.
I don't overstay my visit.
You're welcome. It wouldn't really hurt. Well, this morning we want to talk about the national budget for the financial year 2022-2023. Now, June, of course, is a month where we all are, we are all about the budget talk. It's a national budget month. We have conversations leading to the budget. Of course, we'll be having the reading of the budget, which will be tomorrow, the 14th of June 2022. Now, of course, as a national budget and as a country, as an economy that is really striving to get into a very steady position, this is quite important for all sectors. Now, Mr. Edwin Musime here, before we get into all this, he'll be telling us he's here in what capacity. Yes, and you'd be probably wondering why, how, when, all these questions. He's definitely going to be addressing that before we get into this conversation of the national budget 2022-2023.
Well, my capacity here is in 3 pillars. First, I'm the CEO and Chairman Olim Group, an investment firm that is involved in construction, interior design, real estate development, and of course furniture production and a couple of other things. I'm also the president for Chamber Young Entrepreneurs Uganda and also the president for Green Economy East Africa. Interesting that you asked that question. So I think tomorrow would be the very first national budget that I'm officially invited in my capacity.
Yes.
I remember I used to attend the previous budgets in a couple of 10, 12 years ago we used to do commentary.
Yes.
I remember the van. So and how it all rolled out was I met with the Minister of Finance and I mentioned to him that as a Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs, the young entrepreneurs and young people are feeling totally left out.
Yes.
And we needed to be invited to the table. And so that's how I got my first invitation. So I'm in the capacity here majorly from the Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs perspective and the green economy, probably.
All right. Now, if we are supposed to get straight into the conversation that we are having this morning, Parliament passed a 48.3 trillion budget for the financial year 2022-2023. Now, of course, this has largely is seen as meant to support, of course, interventions and, of course, putting our economy at par. And if you're very attentive, this is what they will be doing tomorrow. But also, just to look at the roadmap, and this is what Mr. Msime is going to be taking us through. When we look at as a country, Uganda, Msime, is Uganda generating sufficient domestic revenue?
Okay, I think to answer that question, we'll need to first of all put everything into perspective.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Akinwumi Adesina, the African Development Bank, put it this way, that people do not eat GDP. And one of the core challenges that most African economies have heard is the failure to have the message of what a budget is about to penetrate to the lay person.
Yes.
Now we know that, of course, it's provided for as an act of parliament. That's Article 155, Section 1. And of course, we then begin to understand that the GDP is about putting together the revenue collection from all the products and services in an economy, right? Of course, including other ways that the government makes the money. But also what I wanted to bring to perspective is a very interesting finding I was looking at. I was looking at how the region is performing.
Yes.
Now, Nigeria is the biggest economy in Africa at 400 billion or so. East Africa has a combined GDP of about 269 billion. You're talking about Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, all of us put together. Literally, Nigeria almost doubles our national budget. Of course, South Africa comes in about 360 or so billion. But why am I bringing this in? That at the moment, I know that you're going to ask this later, but I needed the viewers to understand that at the moment, every economy globally has been hit. So what's very important for us to understand, even as we get into the budget reading tomorrow, it's very important for us to understand that it is against a backdrop where the inflation rates across the world, I'm hesitant to call it a recession since economists have not yet called it a recession, but there are all signs of what a recession would be like. Mm-hmm. So the budget is against that backdrop. Now, that notwithstanding, when Mr. Adesina mentioned something like people don't eat GDP.
Yes.
And you then ask me a question, are we generating enough revenue as a country? Of course not. That is why a huge chunk of our budget has to be funded by borrowing.
Yes.
And then also, of course, the COVID pandemic, which we totally underestimated, has set us back. Someone was telling me agriculture-wise, I think COVID would have set us back 5 years production-wise, 5 years back. Now, productivity levels have gone deliberately low over the last couple of months. Levels and volumes of trade had shrunk.
Yes.
Just trying to pick up right now. But while we were trying to go around the COVID effects, then interestingly or sadly comes the Russian-Ukrainian war. And I remember when this war began, I was speaking to the Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs guys, and I told them, oof, this is not going to look good.
Yes.
And all these young people are looking at me thinking, what has the war got to do with us? But from what go, I knew this cannot be good news for the world at large. Now, two things have happened. And as I answer your question on are we generating enough revenue, I think the people that are watching need to be able to appreciate that we need to keep in check our excitement about the budget reading tomorrow. Because at the moment, while you're dealing with the effects of COVID-19,
yes,
while you're trying to nurse those wounds, the war in Ukraine, Russia versus Ukraine, brings in totally different dynamics, brings out imbalances economically at global level.
Yes.
We've seen wheat prices, energy prices shoot up. While we were talking about fuel, to the Ugandans that are watching, while we are complaining about a liter of fuel being at about 5,500, 5,600, in the city of London,
yes,
right now a liter of fuel is about 12 or 13 or 14,000. More than double what our price is. So it's ugly everywhere. Now, we have not been helped as well by the numerous economic reforms that are happening in China and America with the stimulus budgets and all that.
Yes.
So that also has not helped. Now, at the moment in Uganda, are we generating enough revenue? No, we're not. And the sector that would be giving us this pump,
yes,
would be the agriculture sector, which every year, of course, the budget does cater for fairly okay.
Yes.
But the question, I think, has always been how effective are the resources that are channeled into agriculture able to produce what we want out of agriculture?
Okay.
Now, are we, if the question is, are we presently generating, or in the past have we? Both in the past and presently, we actually have not generated enough revenue. Now, probably let me also answer a question that you'd have asked that you may not ask.
Yes.
Shall we, 2022, 2023,
yeah, because
as the budget is being read tomorrow?
Yes.
From an optimistic point of view, I would say we will manage. From a realistic point of view, it's tough.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I know what that means. I will not get into it. But you also did talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. It has affected us in several ways.
Yeah.
And one of the most evidential ones is looking at the commodity prices, which has been on every Ugandan lip, for the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at this financial budget for 2022-2023, it's a little bit, I don't want to say dismissive, but it's not really explicit when it comes to addressing that issue. Now, when that happens, definitely it tells you that the market is being left to the forces of demand and supply.
Yeah.
So what would be the ideal interventions to be taken to address this specific issue for now?
All right. At the moment, we are in what you'd call a bull's market. Bull's market is where commodity prices are just surging and increasing. Now, the Ukrainian-Russian war has not made things easier in many ways. But also when we talk inflation, I need Ugandans, I've had quite a number of Ugandans want to take to the streets to riot.
Yes, well, some of them have already.
I need Ugandans to understand that while our inflation rates are playing between 5 and 5.1 or so, our neighbors, Rwanda, in April, by the time we were in April, Rwanda had gone into the margins of 10 point, doubling our inflation rates here. Rwanda is not the toughest story to hear. To the Ugandans watching this right now, you may need to be aware that West Africa and North Africa countries are in the regions of 12% and upwards in terms of inflation. Yeah. It is so bad. It is so bad out there. So we're
doing slightly better than the rest. I don't even
in many
want
ways,
to say that.
In many ways, in this particular economic war, there's no losers and no winners. At the moment, I could say we are not doing as badly as a number of economies are doing.
Yes.
Because current stats indicate that we're still between the region of 5.1, 5.2 inflationary.
Yes.
You're talking about countries that have gone up north 10 upwards.
And above, yes.
Now, one would wonder how we got ourselves into this. Okay, yes, COVID was a factor. But it's also very important for us to know that when we look at the purchasing power and consumption of the Ugandans, or people living in Uganda for that matter, food purchases account for 40 or more %
yes.
of all the purchases we make. I mean, when you're trying to check on what you need to cut back on, usually food, okay, maybe you could substitute chicken for
Beans, yes.
But you still need to spend on food. Now, commodity prices, macroeconomic imbalances definitely have been caused by hugely by the Ukrainian-Russian war, and now, of course, on the backdrop of the COVID-19. But now, the state we're in at the moment, you look at the commodity prices in Uganda, which, interestingly, are also pushing the service prices up.
Yes.
You would think, what have services got to do with the war in Iraq and all that kind of thing? But you see, at the end of the day now, it's all multiplier effects all across us.
Yes.
That to the guy that is offering you a service, the petrol is costing that high.
Yes.
Probably if this guy has to feed laborers, I run a construction company. And between you and me right now, BOQs, now we no longer entertain any speculation in BOQs, because I give you a quotation today and my terms and conditions are that's only for 72 hours, because by the time 72 hours are done,
the dynamic, they could change. Yes, they could change.
We are in that particular space right now. Of course, many of us have been waiting for the president. I listened very keenly to the national address because many of us are waiting for hope.
Yes.
Hopefully tomorrow, while we talk about inflation, hopefully tomorrow, the Minister of Finance or Mr. Honorable
Ramadan
Gobi, apart from presenting the stats and the figures, I think it will be very important to humanize this budget.
Mm-hmm.
If they end up treating the budget, the national budget, as business as usual,
yes,
then they will not have done the country justice. We are in tough economic times. You may not give the solution right tomorrow at the budget reading,
yes,
but we need to hear some rhetoric of hope, rhetoric of recovery, rhetoric of rebuilding.
Yes.
That's what the people who are watching, the taxpayers who contribute massively to this same GDP we're talking about, that's what they would want to be able to hear. I would love to hear from the president's speech,
yes,
some message of hope, some message of our rebuilding. It's a work in progress.
Yes.
We are where we are. I want to be able to hear that message that tells me as a young person. Of course, as from a young entrepreneur's perspective, I'm very excited about the budget for one major reason. Item number 1 on human capital development has the biggest chunk of the budget. And actually from this show right now, we are headed to the I'm leading a delegation of young entrepreneurs to the Deputy Speaker, and later we'll meet the Minister of Finance, I think, on Wednesday. And we are very interested in seeing how intentionally this particular chunk of a budget can get to actualization of the real actual results that we're looking for.
Yes.
But by and large,
especially for the young people.
Not just the young people alone.
Yes.
We're talking about the young people, the women in business, because at the end of the day, it's this category of people that end up pushing quite so much, right? That ends up affecting even the old.
Yes.
Okay. So, in as far as this is concerned, of course, there are many measures. For instance, in the UK, it's very interesting. Of course, I know they have bigger budgets. I know that there's a capital relief or a payment relief of about £1,200 per family, just to be able to give them a cushion during these tough times. Different economies are doing different things. Yes, in Uganda, of course, it's obvious that the president would not accept such a thing, because we all know if Matia Kasaija said, okay, today let's have at least the low-income earning households receive at least 1 million shillings per household. High chances more than 70% of these revenues might never find themselves such these households, you know.
Of course, we're looking at achieving a pro-people budget. How does the local man, how does the local woman benefit from
now,
this?
on the screen, you will see something very interesting. Again, this is what we have tomorrow as a budget that's going to be read. You're looking at an expansionary fiscal policy at play. Right from 2019, you just see constant increase. 2020, an increase. Then 2022, 2021, that should have been the COVID time, right?
COVID time,
there was a bit of modesty in approach to the budget. But from the modesty in 2021, look at what has happened to 2022. It's grown by about a 3 point something.
Yes.
So a huge leap and growth that we're looking at there. And probably he's going to go to the figures. Okay.
Yes.
Of course, that tells you so much in terms of our GDP, in terms of revenue from what's collected within the country. You can see the figures at 25.789.27 billion, which is about 54%. Not too bad. Not too bad. Then external, I think the key thing is on borrowing. Oh, he's moved away from the borrowing part.
Well,
now, let me say something about borrowing. Oh, but I know that you're going to ask me something about it. Let me not get into it right now. Then.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, much as we are also seeing quite a huge growth in the budget from 2021, 2022 to 2023, there are certain, of course, budgets that are being slashed. Now, if you are to look at the local government budget, it's actually projected to reduce to 4,459 billion. This is for the financial year 2022-23 from about 4,611 billion in the financial year 2021-2022. Now, when you see a budget slash, when you see a budget cut, definitely there are implications and they're never good. So looking at this specific slash, what are some of the implications we could be headed for?
I'm sorry to say it's very unfortunate to see that the local government is one of the victims of the budget.
Yes.
Because when you look at the Local Government Act that makes provision for some of the things that the local government is supposed to be doing, when you look at the areas of provision for primary and secondary school education, safe water supplies, local LED, the local economic development. Now, I'll tell you one big problem with cutting the local government budget. Of course, I know it might be against a backdrop that local government has other ways of generating revenue in terms of, you know, the rental income taxes and excise duties and trading licenses, etc., etc.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, when you look at the curves of economic growth across Africa, there are 8 out of 48 African countries that are reported by African Development Bank as countries that report present a national budget, and at the end of the day it translates into actual growth, because there are two different things: for you to present a budget of what you're going to do and the realization of the actual growth.
Yes.
Now, when you look at the household surveys across the country, poverty levels are at their most. Now, where is the poverty biting the biggest? If you're talking about the areas of Karamoja, Arua, all those, you're talking about rural areas. Now, much of the business, core business, is done in 80% of the core business is in urban areas.
Yes.
Kampala, Wakiso, Mukono, all those kind of areas. Now, local government ideally is the arm of business that is supposed to reach Omuntu wa wansi daleri.
Yes.
Now, when you cut that budget, I am in a little bit of pain, because you will go across these different municipalities and towns. You realize that this growth and development we're talking about, the middle income status we're talking about, and unfortunately, this is what this is going to imply. We're simply saying that the gap between the rich, the middle income people, must keep increasing, while we leave the poor and low or no income persons way behind. So this, I see, has all traits of widening the gap in terms of income, purchasing power, and livelihood.
Yes.
So I think for me, that budget being cut for the local government is a bit sad. It's a bit sad,
and especially for the really, I mean, for the person at the least bit of the graph. Do you think others who are going to, the people who are really going to feel this cut?
At the end of the day, we might say yes, it is the average household family, deep in Arua, deep in Mbarara, deep in Acholi, deep in Fort Portal. But at the end of the day, let's not sit here in UBC studios in Kampala and think that Uganda is just Kampala.
Yes.
These are our fellow countrymen. They are fellow Ugandans. So when we're talking about a national budget, it ought to be a national budget. So the question ought to be, even when you look at most of the development partners we have, I meet quite a number of them, whether you're talking MasterCard, etc., without me getting into details, majority of the chunks of funding are centered around the urban areas.
Yes.
Most commercial entities have initiatives centered around the urban areas, because the question is, what's in it for us? The purchasing power of the guys in the village is ignored because they don't even have probably any. So for me, there are two budgets I think that hurt me, that always hurt me. One is the local government, it hurt me. Two is the housing sector. I don't know whether he can get that graph back and you look at it. The housing sector, I think the housing sector, tourism, kidogo, because
yes.
when you look at what tourism brings in and what it's being given, you feel like, hang on a minute, we should invest more in what's bringing in more money. Okay, so let's look at housing. Where would that be? I wish my eyes could do me justice here. Let me pick it from my here. So you're looking at housing. Sorry, we're looking at
the tourism industry.
So let's just look at this very quickly. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Now when you look at the tourism industry, it's under. I mean, it's under $1 billion
that it's bringing into the country.
It brings in close to 2.6. We have close to 1.5 million tourists coming in annually. While I move into the Serena, there's all these bazungus coming in. The question ought to be, how better do we invest in the tourism sector to ensure that, I mean, Dubai has close to, the Expo 2020 Dubai brought close to over 100 million people to Dubai. Over 100. In Qatar with the World Cup, they're expecting to have more than 200 million people. Now we're talking about 1.5 million people. And then the budget is under $1 billion. Now, I was talking about the housing sector. Let's look at the housing sector, of which I'm very passionate about. Now, where is it? I wish I could find it. The housing sector stands at, have you seen it? Community housing, where is the housing sector? Sustainable housing, yes. 312 million. Now, our housing deficit nationally is at 2 million.
As we stand right now.
As we stand, the figures could even be more. The urban centers like Kampala, we talk of the range of a housing deficit of close to 600,000 housing units. Now, we are not even yet talking about the housing that is up to standard.
Yes.
Because between you and me, you move around, you have the chideras of Kenya and Uganda. When you go in those areas down there, you can see all the slums. And these are in the urban centers.
In urban centers.
Now, if we're talking about a middle income status economy, you deliberately want to be looking at the housing sector and saying, hang on a minute, we need to do much more for the housing sector. We need to address the issue of low-cost housing. We need to address the issue of affordable housing, because when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, housing is very key.
Yes.
Even to the United Nations. And the United Nations is one of the big contributors of some of the revenues that this country receives. So I feel like the housing sector is being left behind continually. So Honorable Matia Kasaija, I don't know, needs to look into that area properly.
The housing
sector is doing very badly. I mean, when you look at, I was looking at a video of, I don't know the region, it could have been Kasese. They were showing the story of the policemen and how they're able to police.
Yes.
Keep in mind, by the way, this is at the backdrop of the fact that one of the strongest contributors to our economic growth is peace, stability, security.
Yes.
And for the longest time, we all know that the NRM government, that is one of the areas that we've always ticked and said, perfect. And let's not take this for granted. South Sudan, for the longest time, when you look at Sudan in the African economic performance, they have been the poorest economic performers because of the instabilities in that country. Now, if the policemen, they were under a shelter, and it was dripping and leaking.
Yes.
They had no means of transport to go and look at how they police for the community. The sleeping conditions were terrible. So now you're talking about across the board. From the Ugandan, because averagely, when you talk about housing today, a normal average before you even go to the house itself, land, you know what is happening with the land prices.
Yes.
Okay? Two-bedroom house and all that, you're talking about 100 million plus. Are you going to go for a mortgage? Maybe not at the moment. The CBR rate right now has just gone up.
Yes.
To be able to curb inflation. The mortgage rates have gone up. So the mortgage is no longer going to help you at the moment.
At the given moment,
that's why
yes.
I feel that the housing sector is another of those sectors that needs to be in future, because right now nothing can be done. Parliament has already approved the budget. There's no way tomorrow I can go to Ngobi and pull out a paper and say, no, please, housing should. But I think for me, on a serious note, yes, housing should be an area that needs to be given bigger attention in future.
All right. Yeah. Now, we can, of course, we cannot talk about the national budget and we skip quite an important fact, and that is, of course, when it comes to the debt portfolio. Of course, several African countries are struggling when it comes to debt, to having a very big debt or big debts, and which are, I mean, they're consequently or they're consistently growing. I mean, I will look at Uganda to be very specific. If you look at our debt portfolio, it has increased from about 69,215.52 billion. This was back in June in 2021. Right now, it is 73,495.67 billion. Now, this was as of December 2021. Now, when you look at our debt portfolio growing bigger and bigger, I mean, I would be really intrigued to ask you, is our debt portfolio still manageable right now? Or are we going to get to a point where we just cannot service our debts anymore as a country?
Okay, let's bring this to perspective again. In East Africa, what is the news story of debt? Our debt ratio to GDP is at about 51 point something, right? To your neighbors, look at your neighbors, Kenya, they are up north of 60%. Okay? Uganda is still 50%. Rwanda is upwards of 60%. East Africa was it's only Tanzania that has been very modest with its expenditure and borrowing. They are always playing between 47 point something billion. But again, you have Japan that has a debt to GDP ratio of 100%. Yes. I'm not saying that East African countries should borrow up to 100%, because the news story behind it is that Japan borrows at 0%. Most Western countries borrow at 0%, okay?
Which really they hold a great advantage.
And then, of course, the Western world has two advantages.
Yes.
Japan can borrow at 100%, but the interest rate is at 0, number one.
Yes.
But two, the checks and balances and accounting systems and efficiency of delivery and investment in capital and assets for the country are intact. And the growth can be seen. I mean, you go to Tokyo, Japan, and you tell me, you don't have to look around to say, oh, this is a first world. It's
very evident.
Okay?
Yes.
Now, the African story is a little bit different. It's typical. It resonates with the average Ugandan or human being. There's somebody who's watching right now that actually can end up borrowing money to buy a phone, to buy an iPhone. Now, I'm giving you the typical example of what African economies sometimes are like.
Yes.
There is a guy out there that is going to borrow money to impress the girlfriend and either buy her an iPhone for her birthday. You're investing in liabilities that are not going to bring money back. Yes. Now, is the debt manageable in Uganda? I would say yes and no. Yes, in the sense that we're actually not doing badly when you visit different economies and look at the debt to GDP ratio.
Yes.
Told you Kenya, Rwanda, up 60%. Only TZ 47. We at 51 point something and all that. However, of course, also the Uganda debt network seems to indicate that our debt to GDP ratio might be slightly higher when you talk about legal fees and fines, etc., etc. But that notwithstanding, manageable if the current budget that will be read tomorrow can be able to be translated into tangible results. If can be able to have a better public investment policy where we are investing in real assets and return on investment is actually good and priorities are set right, and that ministries, I always sympathize with the CEO of this country for one reason. I remember time, I think was that last year, there's a budget reading that came with the theme Chisanja Hakuna Michezo. Okay?
Yes.
Now you can see that the leader of the country is passionate about this change. He wants that middle income status. He wants to drive the economy forward. He wants the transformation. He wants an inclusive economy. But the teams are letting him down.
Yes.
The ministers, I interact, and please, if you're watching and you're a minister, I interact with these ministers. They are more reactionary in nature. They will sit in their offices, and the only time you're going to see them is when they're officiating at a function. If you asked a question, the budget that is going to be read tomorrow, at what point in time do we see a minister going to and from, launching this project, opening this project? But most of them rely on invitations of come and be the guest of honor at this launch of our Rotary something, at our this company is doing ABCD.
So they don't push for it. They waited to be pulled along.
Okay, let's face the fact. Let's face the fact. Many of these ministers are out of touch with reality.
That's true.
And they have signed to optimum in terms of performance, and they're not delivering. So it's very important, and it's very important that these ministers should surround themselves with some young people that are highly energetic and innovative. Because it doesn't make sense for me when you present a budget. Now, I'm bringing it to a layman's perspective. You present a budget and you say, the housing sector, it may not be a very big budget, but here is the budget that you can work with. You have the money available to you. Why don't you put it to use? Local government, for instance, a budget year ends on the 30th of July.
Yes.
Right? Ends 30th June, starts 1st July. But reports indicate that some of these guys receive their money upwards of the 25th.
Yes.
Question is, who is holding this money? Release the money. So there's one big problem with this budget that is being presented tomorrow. That there seems to be, Christians might say a spirit, but there seems to be something that holds money somewhere that we don't understand. So I think for me it's very important to take note of this, that, that even as we look at discussions on the efficiency of the budget that is presented in being able to translate into actual results on ground, I think the ministers who are in charge of these budgets, the permanent secretaries, I don't know whether the president will introduce a new theme for them to wake them up. The other one was Hakuna Mchezo. I don't know what this one could be, but they need to wake up, especially, if anything, they should wake up and realize the times we're in are really tough and they require great leadership. And if the president has entrusted them with these offices, they need to rise up and play their part.
Well, we cannot talk about the national budget, and we also failed to talk about the taxi policies in Uganda. Now, when we look at this, I mean this budget that is going to be read out for tomorrow, we've heard very many people in Uganda complain of the tax policies, how they're really quite unfair, and over time, in the last couple of months years, we've seen taxes grow, especially for the people in the business sector, which definitely has quite a number of young people, the youth and all that. But if we're looking at this budget, do you think the way it was, I mean, they went to the board and realized this sector, this sector, this sector, when you look at all this money that was allocated in all these specific provisions, do you think it provides for a fair, it's fair to the tax policies that we currently have in Uganda's economy?
Ideal situation, we know that goods and services tax usually is one of the biggest funders to URA, and of course the corporate tax and VAT.
Yes.
Now, are the taxes fair? To answer this question, I will say that to my fellow Ugandans, world over, taxes are paid. To the extent of which these taxes play their actual part, that is a matter for another discussion. Right now what we are debating is the fact that every country collects taxes. Even the good old Bible that the president loves to quote, that I love to quote the Bible, God himself, what does he say? Jesus says, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. So Caesar must collect his own. That is a given. Okay? Now, the question on whether the taxes are fair, of course there have been concerns here and there of double taxation and all that, etc. But of course, URA, I will commend them in one area. They have tried their best to ensure that, of course, they have a tribunal that helps reconcile and amicably resolve any issues to do with queries, because that's one of the areas that brings in the fairness and freeness, fairness and balance, that you actually, if you have a grievance with URA over taxes, there's a tribunal that actually can be able to discuss this, and you can amicably agree to resolve it, okay? That notwithstanding, we've seen URA also have big challenges.
Yes.
One, they are not able, every year they have failed to hit the target. One, you have a massively huge informal sector where people many times do not actually volunteer the correct information of their incomes.
Yes.
Two, most businesses, I mean, Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs, there are many entrepreneurs I know of that would prefer to handle their business in a briefcase and not get into registration because of the taxes and all that.
Yes.
Now, there are two kinds of people. There's one, Sharon in Kamocha, that runs a salon that tells you, right now, mine is a small business. I do hair by visiting people's homes, but one day I would love to set up in a salon and even register and pay taxes, because it's important to pay taxes so that my roads are constructed, infrastructure is built. There's one mindset like that. There's another mindset of Jacob, who is in Arua, saying, my friend, I pay trading license. Then I pay, I think there's also a certain other license that they pay, 70,000 and then 220,000 about there. And it feels like, no, that's already too much.
Yes.
I'm not breaking even, I'm not making any profit. Now, my only concern with URA oftentimes is that even in these biting times, and it's a catch-22, because in the biting times you'd think URA, please get a bit lenient.
Yes.
There are countries that have relaxed some, they have created some subsidiaries here and there, they have created some adjustments in VAT, but again the problem with that is that again you're on a backdrop where the economy is not doing well, and they also have to meet their targets.
Yes.
So it's a catch-22 here. But that notwithstanding, I think on its part government needs to ensure that when taxes are collected and a budget is read, let it do what it's supposed to do. On the Ugandans' part, let's simply continue to do our part in terms of getting in the taxes.
Okay, so in just a minute, Mr. Msime, what do you think the government of Uganda should do differently for these budget 2022-23, especially now that we are seeing that our inflation rises are really going high? At least what would you expect to see running different?
To the Ugandans, I don't want to say it's going to get worse before it gets better, but
Yes.
I know the president somewhere said we should tighten our belts. Now, to the Ugandans, I need to say, before we even talk about the national budget and all that, as a household, the other day I was driving from a meeting at 10:30 in the night, and bars everywhere are packed. And we're talking about an economy doing badly.
Yeah.
I think it's very important for households to reassess their situation and realize that things are not that good. And today, that same money, you might be deadening a table today, but next week things could be bad. So think about your family, because charity begins at home. So let's first of all put our household incomes in order. In fact, as they read the budget tomorrow, every household right now needs to be thinking of how we can budget. How we can budget for these tough times to get better. Now, at a national level, I don't know which theme the president can introduce to the ministers to wake them up and implementers. Away from Chisanja Hakuna Mchezo, another stronger word needs to come in. Please, to the implementers of the budget, our economy needs inclusivity. It needs a working budget, not just a budget on paper. So my hope is tomorrow, whoever holds that briefcase, whether it's Honorable Matia, Honorable Ngobi, that briefcase, we want those papers to translate into real tangible ideas for real economic growth that we can experience in the urban centers and in the rural centers.
Indeed, we are looking forward to having a national budget for the people, that is pro-people, and hopefully that is what we'll be hearing tomorrow. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Msime Edwin.
Pleasure.
CEO of Olim Group, and definitely we hope to be seeing you here next time. And again, tomorrow we'll be on the alert. The whole procession will be running here on UBC TV about the national budget reading, so make sure you don't go anywhere. We have Ruben Pima Chiriango coming in for more sports updates, and probably he'll be giving us more details on what happened in the broadcast derby yesterday. Who won, who didn't take the trophy home, all that he'll be delivering. Otherwise, we'll be having you on our socials as well. Our conversations are still happening over there, so feel free to engage. I am Philomena Mastiko. Good morning.
Get connected today with the My Airtel 4G smartphone and enjoy free data for 1 whole year worth 86,500 Uganda shillings. That's free 2 GB for the first month and free 1 GB for the next 11 months at only 250,000 Uganda shillings with free data for 1 whole year worth 86,500 shillings, making the effective price of the 4G phone 163,500 shillings only. Airtel, the smartphone network.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Hallelujah Jingati drink and Hallelujah Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body, because